My God, it is a triple huge honor today. I cannot believe I'm going to be podcast interviewing Sandy Pardue, Laura Hatch, Rohit Garg. You guys all know these people. Sandy Pardue was episode 32, and I credit her for why the show got so big. I think that was my breakout when I got on Sandy Pardue on episode 32. She's a senior consultant and lecturer with Classic Practice Resources, has consulted with offices throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Her website's classicpractice.com. Laura Hatch is a legend in my mind, has always been. She's the founder and owner of Front Office Rocks, a company with the goal of helping other dental offices train and learn new policies and procedures that her team has proven very successful in making dental offices work better. Her website is frontofficerocks.com. She was on podcast episode 235. She's from California. Rohit Garg is one of the co-founders of Practice by Numbers alongside his wife, Dr. Agarwal. His website is practicenumbers.com. He was just on podcast episode 740. He's from Seattle. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to get you three legends on at the same time? And how I want to open this up is you guys are out in the field in the biggest ways. What are you seeing in the field? What's the state of the dental industry? What problems are you seeing and solving out there in dentistry? And who wants to start? Shall we start with Sandy, since she was on the first, since she's the one who made this show possible on episode 32? By the way, Sandy, that was a big breakout episode. I mean, I was puttering along, and then I had you, and I think the show doubled at that moment.
I get a lot of positive feedback from that episode. Absolutely. Still. So, okay, what do I see? Wow. I talk to dentists daily. I talk to dentists daily on dentaltown.com, and they call me, and I hear the same things over and over again. They are trying to gain control over their practice, and they have staff issues. That's number one. If you ask a dentist, it's going to be staff issues. And they're clueless about how to start and get organized and motivate their team and raise their income. But, I'll ask them basics. How many new patients are you getting every month? I'll have to check with my girl at the front desk. So what's your full-time equivalent statistic? Which is something that we've been keeping since the 80s, where we take the number of full-time staff equivalent and divide by the collections in the practice, and we get a number, which we like that. Our clients, we can kind of tell if somebody's hanging around 150, 175,000 per staff member, we know we can help them a lot. And if they're closer to the $200,000 mark, we know that they're probably doing well, and we can help them with some systems. So they are clueless about how their practices are doing, and that's what I'm seeing, and we're helping them by organization.
Okay, explain the full-time equivalents one more time. So you take the total collected revenue divided by number of employees?
Full-time. So if you've got two part-time hygienists and the two of them together equal one person, then that counts as one person. So it's full-time equivalent.
But what should it be? So you have total collection divided by number of full-time equivalent employees, and what would you like that number to be?
If they're close to 200,000 or above, I know that office has a lot of good things happening. That they are pretty much organized and they're getting the most out of their team members that they can.
And then what would average be?
What I'm seeing is anywhere from 150 to 175.
And so A would be 200 above. What would you put 175? Would that be a B or a C?
Yeah, I can really help that guy.
Okay, but what letter grade would you give that?
I would say that they're lower. Anybody there is low, like they need a lot of help.
So 175 you put as a C, and 150 you'd put as a D or an F?
A D or an F, yeah.
Okay.
D or an F.
Okay.
I've only seen one or two people below 150, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
we don't see 150.
But no matter what, though, remember, if the Earth goes around the sun, everybody gets a $1 raise. Because it's based on the zodiac.
Yeah. That's the way it goes. That's what they think.
All right, Laura Hatch, what are you seeing?
I'm agreeing with Sandy 100%. I think that dentists want to have better control over their practice, and they don't know how. The great thing is there's so many more resources now. I think when I got started, in 2002, we didn't have the internet. We had to, go to courses, go to seminars, go to conferences. Now we have the internet, we have software, we have a lot of tools. But like Sandy said, the doctors need to know where to start. Like, what do I do first? What do I fix first? And they're challenged by that. They do I fix new patients? Do I fix marketing? Do I fix my staff? All they know is to produce, which is great. But if you're not effective and you're not efficient, you're just doing dentistry. And at the end of, like Sandy said, at the end of the week, they don't know their numbers. They have to go to the girls up front, and it's almost like they're working for their staff versus their staff working for them. But I believe that now there's a lot of resources that can help them, which is great. They just need to know, where they need to fix and where they need to focus first.
Rohit, what are you seeing?
Well, what I saw, and again, I've been involved in dentistry only through my wife, because she is a dentist, and I helped her grow her first practice and then a second practice, is that there's so many moving parts in a dental offices, okay, meaning any dental office, even single or multiple dental offices, that doctors and dentists and owners, they cannot keep track of all the moving parts. And by moving parts, I mean, of course, there's all the different processes, but there's also different numbers in keeping your staff in your office accountable. And that's one of the reasons we started Practice by Numbers, is to be able to bring accountability to your front office staff, to your back office staff, to your marketing organization, to your doctors and your hygienists and the associates. Without knowing numbers, it's kind of shooting in the dark. And that's one of the problems that we have had, that we go into an office and we ask them, so how do you think you're doing? Like, I think we're doing pretty well. Our patients are coming back, and patients are scheduling, and our treatment acceptance is high. And most times people are unpleasantly surprised that, whoa, this is not what I expected. So that's what I see, that people just shoot off the hip, shoot from the hip, or whatever the saying goes. Laura?
Well, what I was going to say is, and it's not just the doctors, unfortunately, it's also the team. It's the staff. So a lot of times they want to do better. They want to fix the practice, but they don't know where to start. And if you don't know where you are, you don't know what you can improve. And the doctor comes up and says, fill my schedule. And then the staff sitting there going, with what? And so not having the tools, the resources, and knowing where you are, everyone's kind of spinning, trying to do their best. I mean, I think everyone's trying to do their best. There's just not working in a unified manner with the team and the doctors all going towards the same direction.
Right. And one other thing that I want to do add is that there are a lot of doctors who do create goals. I mean, goals are great. They do have goals for production and what is it that you want to do, profitability. But remember, those goals are so high and lofty that it's hard to take those goals and translate those goals into meaningful actions. And that's when you need to be able to really understand what's going on in the practice, to be able to take those high-level goals. Maybe let's say there's a goal of $500,000 profitability. How does that goal relate to an assistant who's working in the back? It doesn't. The assistant doesn't care. So you have to make the goals small enough and bite-sized enough that your individual staff members will care.
It's funny how the first thing you said, Sandy and Laura, was that they're complaining about staff issues, right? You both agreed that was number one.
Absolutely.
And I heard, the other day, Ryan bust out laughing, because his dentist was whining to me about how, he feels like his stay-home wife doesn't support him and doesn't help him, and that all of his problems or because his wife's staying home and having kids and he has no support or help or anything. And I just said, dude, could you imagine a press conference with Steve Jobs when the Macintosh was falling and he's like, well, my wife isn't helping me and my stay-home mom. Could you imagine if Andy Grove at Intel's at a press conference, someone says something, well, my office manager won't help me and my assistant, and it's like, dude, can you ever just call bullshit and look at the man in the mirror? Nobody in the Fortune 500 would blame shit on their stay-home poor wife raising babies and their poor receptionist who's named after a piece of furniture, my front desk lady. I mean, they just never man up and grow a pair. And so do you think the staff issues is basically a way of saying just deflection? It's not me, it's my staff. They won't do anything. Instead of just realizing there's other dentists that own the ball, own the court. So how do you How do you see that staff issue? Is that just whining and they don't have a mirror in their house? They can't see the man in the mirror, or are their staff really just freaking clueless?
Lack of leadership. A totally 100% lack of leadership. I just, every other month, I have a whole new group of clients coming in, and we just did it this past weekend. And great dentist, quality dentistry, the staff having a lot of respect for the dentist, a great team members, but they don't know what to do. And Rohit mentioned production targets and goals, and I think that's great, but they give them these huge targets and they're not based on anything real. So practice by numbers allows you to go and see what they're actually producing so that we can bump that up about 15% of what they're doing now and have new targets, and they can watch them. And then the next thing that we're going to do to help with that is to divide duties and put some of those numbers on practice by numbers with each section of the practice and make them accountable, and then teach them how to do their job to improve those numbers. But the staff are assigned specific numbers that relate to their position in the practice. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of stress comes off the doctor, and the results are amazing because they get a higher production and more predictability.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the reasons that Sandy and I both love practice by numbers, because I was actually in a client's office a couple months ago, and they fill out these forms at the end of the day, and what was their pre-appointment percentage and what was their production, and they did really poor. I mean, they only pre-appointed 46% of their patients that day. I said, well, what do you do with this number? And they said, we send it to our consulting company. And I go, and what do you do with that? And they go, I don't know. They come once a quarter and we go over the numbers. And I'm like, what's the point of tracking the numbers if you're not looking to improve them? So I think being accountable, like you said, leadership, being accountable, and then they can get the real, if you give them the training, they know, okay, if I get my patients to pre-appoint, that means we're going to have a full schedule, we're going to be productive, so they can actually play a part versus just giving them a lofty goal, like you said, and then hoping they understand, because the staff's not trained usually much better than the doctor is when it comes to running the office.
Yeah. And nobody's assigned to specific things. That one thing is very powerful. Yep. Putting someone in charge over an area instead of just having everyone sharing all of the duties. So that goes with practice by numbers as well.
Completely.
Yeah. There's also the issue that sometimes the expectations are not even communicated. So the office just shows up and they do the best thing they can, but they have never been communicated to say, I want my pre-appointment rate to be at 85 or 90%. Okay. And then watching it and measuring it day in and day out. Communication just doesn't happen. And that's also the same exact thing that Sandy said, which is lack of leadership, where the doctor is not setting expectations and then measuring those expectations, then improving those expectations as well.
I think that one of the things that's great about practice by numbers that I love is that the doctors didn't know how, you couldn't get this information out of your practice management software before. I mean, it would be very hard to find out how many patients walked out today without an appointment, how many patients, and the doctors don't know how to get it. But now with practice by numbers, it's easy to get the data you need because it pulls it right out of the software to help the doctors start to make the staff more accountable. That's what I love about it. I mean, we can track in our office how many times the girls picked up the phone, how many phone calls did they make, how many outstanding, treatment plan calls did they make, where before, the doctor would walk up and go, what are you guys doing today? And they're like, well, we're busy. Well, you're busy doing what? Like, what are you doing? And so it's a lot better to help the doctor hold the team more accountable.
Well, let me stop there. Sandy said she's open with, you both agree with staff issues. We talked about full-time equivalents that, an A would be $200,000 of revenue per full-time equivalent. A C would probably be 175, and 150 or less would be a failure. But let's talk about letter grades on running a business with Dentrix or EagleSoft. What letter grade, Sandy, would you give Dentrix or EagleSoft? What letter grade would you give them?
Well, I'm going to give Dentrix higher than EagleSoft. I hope they're not listening.
Is that like saying a dog turd smells better than horse shit?
Yeah, actually it does, I think. So,
but seriously, because some people think I pick on Dentrix or EagleSoft too much, and I mean they don't realize that I went up to Provo 20 years ago. I flew down to Melville and talked to Stan Bergman in 1999. I flew to Effingham, Illinois, which is in the middle of effing nowhere, to tell these people that, and they've been stone cold deaf, and I think they're responsible for the state of the industry. I mean,
I was with you in Utah whenever you stood up about 5 years ago and told all the VIPs over there at Dentrix. I know exactly where you're headed with this in regards to the software integrating with QuickBooks or the accounting software, and they have been slow to do that.
slow.
I mean, they're not doing it. They're not. It's non-existent.
Yeah.
So, because I think that they're solely responsible for the total explosion of PPOs, because when these dentists didn't know their cost, and they didn't know that it cost them $200 to be in the room for an hour, and they signed up for these plans that they'd be in the room for an hour because they don't know their cost. And I just, but anyway, but continue, Sandy. You were picking up where Laura left off. Laura, what would you agree though? I mean, am I picking on Dentrix or EagleSoft, or have they completely dropped the ball?
No, and actually you were the first one. I think we talked about it, or I saw you in an interview talk about it, and it made so much sense to go, we know this part of our business, but we're missing the bottom line. We're missing the how much are we spending, and
I can't find it in any other business where the accounting is not seamlessly involved with the practice manager. We have all the insurance and all the schedule, and there's no connection to accounting.
And I'll take it one more step. There's a statistic in Practice by Numbers that I absolutely love. And it's, Rohit, you can tell us the exact one, but it's like percentage of deposits, where it's like, it shows you how much should be going into the bank. And that seems like an obvious thing to me, right? This is what EagleSoft said you made today. This is what you should be putting in your bank. Here's what. But think about the embezzlement in our industry. And if I go ask the doctors, how much do you put in the bank? Oh, I don't know. Susie goes to the bank. Susie deposits the check. Susie puts everything in EagleSoft, and they have no idea what they're making. And I'm like, that's just crazy to me. So that's just one thing right there, that just to know that your EagleSoft and your QuickBooks match and you're actually getting the money you're supposed to be getting. It's crazy that a business doesn't have that information right in front of them as an owner.
Right. Yeah. But Rohit, I have a question for you, Rohit. With Practice by Numbers, because I'm noticing a trend with our Practice by Number users. We're putting every client, when they sign up, we're paying for them to have Practice by Numbers. Now, how many of those are connecting to QuickBooks?
I haven't checked your client list, but I think, Sandy, overall, I think it's about 50 to 60% of people are connecting to QuickBooks Online.
So that's something we have to work on.
But I got to stop right there, though. But, I got an MBA from ASU. QuickBooks Online is Kool-Aid stand stuff. I mean, QuickBooks Desktop, you could kind of run $1 million business. QuickBooks Online, you really couldn't. And that's what I wanted to ask. That's what I've been asking programmers is, the person that makes me the most mad of this whole deal was actually Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton blocked Microsoft from buying Quicken, and he thought it was monopolistic because they already controlled PowerPoint and Excel and Word. And it's like, who gives a shit about that? The accounting. So then after Clinton was gone, they went back and bought Great Plains Accounting. And they call that Microsoft, or what is it called? Microsoft GP, and the GP is for Great Plains. But, we run on Peachtree. We could never run, because I got a dental office and a magazine and other things. We could never do, we could barely run today's dental on QuickBooks Desktop. QuickBooks Online, never. But Peachtree, but anyway, I was wondering if somebody could find a programmer and find, do we have to use SAP accounting? That the Fortune 500, almost all of them run on SAP. Microsoft has Microsoft GP, but yeah, QuickBooks Online, that's a danger. And then all your corporates, and by corporate, not just like 50 or more locations, but you can't have a satellite office, or let alone 5 locations, and do that on QuickBooks Online.
But Howard, it's kind of like baby steps. We got to get them crawling before they learn to walk, and we got to get them walking before they start running. And so just looking at the numbers, even if, I understand that you have a huge enterprise versus a lot of dentists out there who aren't even looking at what's going on.
And you know what the red flag is? The biggest red flag that no one's talking about? There's only been 3 banks funding all these corporate. And last year, one of the big 3, East West Bank out of North Carolina, pulled out. They said, we're having so much trouble with this DSO portfolio, they're not lending anymore. And when you go, and when you know people that are in the DSO business, they'll tell you, hell, 80% of our offices are losing money, and even that still comes back to accounting issues.
Yeah.
So the accounting issue has to be solved, and it's not going to be done with QuickBooks Online. But I agree, baby steps.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Dr. Fran, that QuickBooks.
Rohit, you should be able to look at that. Can you look at the Microsoft and the Peachtree and try to see if there's something more sophisticated in the cloud than Quicken Online?
So yes, absolutely, and Xero is our next software that's on the pipeline, and we'll definitely add Peachtree there as well. And I do agree that QuickBooks Online is lacking. Actually, it's gotten a lot better. So if you looked at it 2 or 3 years ago, it was actually quite basic, but the bridge has been, the gap has been reduced quite a bit between what QuickBooks Desktops used to be and what QuickBooks Online is now. And I switched over my wife's offices about 1.5 years ago, and I couldn't be happier based on QuickBooks Desktop and Online. Now, with that said, does it solve the needs of larger 50, 100 location more? Perhaps not, but for offices 1 to 10 locations, QuickBooks Online does a pretty nice job. And the reason we haven't added other systems like Xero or Peachtree is just not enough people are using it right now.
But I would think that's why I want you to look. Can you look at Microsoft for me, because you're smarter in that area, and Microsoft's
Definitely
a monster. I mean, they just bought LinkedIn, and so I really so yeah. Will you look at their accounting deal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I will look into the Great Plains Peachtree stuff.
Thanks.
Now, Sandy, to get your clients connected, I know that you said you want them all connected. It's so easy. We actually did, Rohit and I did like a quick little tutorial to just connect. And it might not be 100% correct, but for our doctors to sit down and look at it, it was really easy. They just need to, it took us like a half an hour to just go through it. It's super easy to get connected.
They have to want to do it. I mean, they don't see the value. It's right there. And so that's what we have to work them.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. I mean, they have to buy in.
They've never had to look at it before.
They're like, we're going to hook you up. You know how easy it is to hook up to practice by numbers?
Yeah.
I mean, that is very easy. And a lot of them are like, now, what are we going to be doing with this?
Yeah.
So by the way, that Microsoft was called Microsoft Dynamics GP. Microsoft Dynamics GP. They bought Great Plains. They changed it to Microsoft Dynamics, and the GP is for Great Plains. But if some kid is working in Aspen right now, and they want to start up a de novo next year, what practice management software would you tell them to go use?
Open Dental, 100%.
Laura, what would you say?
I've never worked with Open Dental. I've worked with Dentrix and EagleSoft, so I don't know. I'd
say 90. Well, no, I'm not going to go that high. 70% of our clients are probably Open Dental.
Are they really? I've never worked with Open Dental before.
Rohit, what would you say?
Well, based on the fact that they are open source and very easy to work with, I do like all three. But if I have to, you put a gun to my head, I will pick Open Dental.
Seriously, and then I'll say Dentrix is number 2 for me.
I would agree. Yes.
I think the one thing that with Dentrix and EagleSoft for me, just because they're supported by the big suppliers, they're always going to compete and keep up with each other. I think Dentrix actually is a better software, but I think EagleSoft is user-friendly for the staff. It's click and point, but you can't get all the information out of it that you can get out of Dentrix. But if you're working with practice by numbers, my staff they put their notes in EagleSoft and they do the treatment plans, but we're running our day-to-day out of practice by numbers, our calls, who are we calling, all of that. So it's good for you, Rohit, but it's kind of sad that we needed to get another software to get what we actually needed out of what we have. But that's what you've got.
Okay, you guys started the program saying that the staff was the concern. And that was, and my resolve was, okay. What would you say? Can we get an agreement on what the number 2 would be?
I think systems and in the office. Like when I just spoke this past weekend in Michigan, and everyone's like, we don't know what to do with cancellations and no-shows. We don't know what to do with our late patients. We don't know and I'm like, how are you sitting here not knowing how to handle this? But they haven't been trained. They're just kind of going on gut feeling, which
They bring what they did at the last place they worked over to the new office, and that becomes the system, and the doctor's clueless.
Yeah. And it's the most dominant person on the staff. So whoever's the most vocal says, this is how we do things here. And the quiet ones who might actually have a better idea, because nothing's documented, because there's not systems, because the doctor would rather be in the back doing the dentistry and hoping everything is going well in the front. And if it's not trained, if we don't have, systems in place, it's all kind of on the mood of the day and how people.
Yeah, it's completely ad hoc, and people do.
So I did a podcast with Nathan Sparks, who runs Open Dental. His brother Jordan's a dentist that started it, but then he kind of moved on, and Nathan's running it. I told him, I pitched him an idea on my podcast. Did you guys see that show? You guys go back, because I pitched him this idea and I dropped you guys' names that, I think one of the biggest problems with the systems is that when you pull up EagleSoft or Dentrix, you're overwhelmed with 40,000 options to do. But whenever I go to Hertz Rent-A-Car, Hyatt, Hilton, whatever, the practice manager software has been reduced to, these are the 4 things you do to check in a Hertz Rent-A-Car. These are the 5 things you do to check in at the hotel. These are the 3 things you do. So that what I wanted is a box, so you could sit there and say, I'm going to close. And when consultants go into an office, they can run report generators to show you like 85% of that software is never used. So if it's never used, it needs to be all turned off. And I said, I wanted to do a brainstorming session where I get like you guys to come down with Nathan. We all meet. And so if you said, okay, I'm going to open dental, but I want to use Sandy Pardue still. So it would close out every single thing else. So then if someone calls and I need to schedule an appointment, I have to do these 8 things. I can't even close it out until I've done 8 steps. I can't do step 8 until I've done step 7. I can't do 7 until I've done 6. That way you don't come back and say, well, how come you didn't enter this? It's all overwhelming. And he agreed that that was a great idea. So if we're not using 85% of the software, I mean, imagine a Hertz Rent-A-Car, when they pull out that little personal digital, that PDA, imagine if it was Dentrix and there were 45,000 icons on that thing. Nobody could figure out how to check in your damn car. So would you guys be interested in doing that?
Sure.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Are you familiar with Coyce's new software, John Coyce, up in Seattle?
Yes, I had dinner with him at the Townie meeting, and yeah.
And so his whole idea with his software is a lot of the issues. My husband's done training at Coyce, and it's so intensive what they learn there, and it's very hard to come back and implement it into the practice. And so I believe with his new software, it's kind of that same concept, except for it's more clinical. It's about the exam portion, and that you're running them through the right processes to develop the treatment plan. And he's developed a software because he couldn't find any other software that helps support the implementation. The doctors learn all this, and they go back to the practice, and you can't to make a medical history update form that's customized, there's a lot of people in dental that don't even know how to do that in their software. And so it's really hard to get this advanced training and then come back and try to make it work in what we have. It's not easy to do.
Well, we should bring him into the party. I mean, I love John. I think he's just an amazing man. We had him speak at Townie meeting in Vegas. I've only ever disagreed with John on one thing ever, and that is he's Greek, so he always uses Windex on the crowns before he cements it. And okay, you don't know what that joke means if you didn't see My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Sandy, I don't think you saw that movie, did you?
Of course, I've seen it 10 times.
All right, so did you catch the Windex joke?
Yeah.
So staff issues is number 1, systems was number 2. What do you think is number 3?
Training.
I'm gonna agree with her, but I'm gonna say it's that the importance of customer service, and which is training, but like that the staff understands that our patients can go across the street and get their dentistry somewhere else, and that the experience overrides the actual dentistry, unfortunately. I mean, patients aren't walking around judging the crowns and the match and is it CAD CAM, is it not? They're judging the girl at the front desk. Did she smile? Was it easy to schedule?
Laura, I'll take it one step farther. I've been a dentist for 30 years. You'll have only one gold crown in your whole mouth. I'll point to it. Who did that gold crown? They don't even remember.
No, yeah.
They
My husband.
never remember who did the dentistry. They only remember who they liked and who pissed them off.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the number one complaint on the internet about dental offices has to do with the front. It's not usually about the dentistry. It has to do with the girls weren't nice, or it was they got upset with me when I canceled, or the percentage was off on what the insurance was going to cover. And so I think it's vital that the doctors and the team understand that's how patients are judging us. You know, they're judging us when the moment they walk in the door or the moment they call our office. And we don't put enough, like Sandy said, training into that part of it. We go to clinical training. We learn how to do implants. We learn how to do, you know, Invisalign. But what about how do we talk to patients about it and the importance behind the customer service?
Well,
Yeah, one thing.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I was going to say that one thing that dentists need to realize is that they want predictability. They all tell me that. I want predictability. My production's like a roller coaster. The only way to have predictability, and you guys can quote me on this, is consistent actions equal predictability. That's the only way. I mean, they have to do the same things. It's like a good recipe, you know. Down here in Louisiana, we make good gumbo, and it's consistent. If you change anything, it's not going to be as good. So consistency will give you predictability.
Oh, you can't have consistent gumbo. Nobody knows what's in that bowl.
Put same thing in there. And so what happens is with practice by numbers, you can assign these tasks and put people in charge and make sure that they're consistent in their actions to give you consistent statistics, and practice by numbers is going to allow you to do that.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm going to extend what Sandy is saying here, that most practices, meaning one of the important things, right? The third one, which training and Sandy said consistency. I would also add a third one would be a follow-up. No matter which practice I've gone into, unless they have been using a software like this and tracking everything, the lack of follow-ups with patients in any practice is a killer. And consistently doing that over and over and over again is very important to be able to say when patient came in, people just sit, they just hope that they will call them back. And
that
there
is so
no follow-ups.
Good. I'll give you a good example of that. I see this all the time. You can go to dentaltown.com, and almost every day you're going to see a doctor fussing or bitching about an empty schedule. Oh my goodness, the schedule, we have open time, I'm about to die, we're going to all just crawl up and die over here. Okay, go to your software and print a report that shows you everyone that hasn't had a cleaning in a year. Go back like 8 months to 3 years. There's going to be 1,000 people on the list. And you're going to tell me you can't put 2 or 3 people on the schedule? So that's huge.
And now, Sandy, like you just said, print a report. That's what we used to do in my office. We'd print the report out of EagleSoft, and the girls, now with practice by numbers. And my husband, we talk, because I can remote in from home. I'm working from home today. And I can message him and say, nobody's made calls today, or the girls only made 1 or 2 calls. And the dentists, they're not up front. They don't know what should be done, but the girls look busy. The staff looks busy. But now we can measure how many calls did you make? So when they say, well, I can't fill the schedule this week. Well, guess what? You haven't made any calls. You got to get on the phones. And so we set goals with our office of this is how many calls everybody needs to make throughout the day to make them more accountable, because we didn't have that before. We would print that report, hand it over, and cross our fingers that they were making calls.
And a lot of calls do not happen in practices.
Yep. You've got to be on the phones. Patients aren't going to call us until their teeth hurt.
That's right.
Yeah.
We got to call them. And my big thing is if they're in the office and they're told they need this, and then they leave and you don't follow up with phone calls, what do the patients start to think? Right. Do I really need it? Were they after just my insurance or my money? If we're not putting a priority into those phone calls.
Yeah. Being proactive.
Exactly. Howard, Sandy and I could talk about this all day long.
Forever.
Well, I want you to. I want to. One more thing. When we talk about, you said customer service, and a lot of dentists talk about, they call that the new patient experience. And the new patient experience, just the name of it shows you how messed up the industry is. Because again, dentists always talk about advertising for new patients. Nobody at the S&P 500 talks about new patients. They all talk about loyalty programs. I mean, they assume everybody's gone to Walmart, American Airlines, and Amazon one time. They're trying to keep their patients with great customer service. The dentist walnut brain, like I'll go into a town of 5,000. There's 3 dentists there. I'll meet a guy who's 65. He's been there from 25 to 65, and I say, well, what do you need at 65? He goes, well, what I really need is new patients. What do you recommend for marketing? Would it be Facebook or direct mail? I was like, dude, you've been in a town for 40 years with only 5,000 people. You've pissed everyone off in the county 3 times. And you're asking me if you're going to use Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and build your success. I mean, and point number 2, when people throw corporate dentistry under a bridge, I like to remind them to look at the man in the mirror. You almost will never find a dentist that doesn't accept new patients. So
Right.
This is what we know. And I want you to fill in the back door of how we see, by the time the average dental office gets to 5,000 charts, 4,000 of them have never been back. My definition of an active patient is if you're scheduled for something. I mean, if you come in for a cleaning, you should be scheduled for your next deal. So here's the front door. I'll explain the front door. So the front door, 10 people have to land on your crappy website before it converts 1 to call your office. 3 people have to call your office before your receptionist, named after a piece of furniture, can convert 1 to come in. 3 people have to come in with a cavity for you to convert 1 to get a drill, fill, and bill. So to get 1 person to drill, fill, and bill, I need 3 patients. To get 3 patients, I need 9 to call. To get 9 to call, I need 90 to land on my website. And so then the sweet spot in the middle is this average general dentist is doing $650,000 a year, netting 180. Unless you're a specialist, they're collecting 1 million, netting 320. But I want you to fill in the customer service. How do you lose 80% of your practice? I mean, obviously, if the hygienist has 8 people today and she only schedules 6 of them for a recall, hell, that alone was 25% of your practice. But I just filled in the funnel to get to what the dentist is doing in the middle. But how is the customer service losing 80% out the back door?
Oh, it's part customer service, but a lot of it has to do with I'm going to say lack of systems. I'm telling you, I just stood in front of a group of practices and asked them, who has a recall process? And they look at me like I asked them some question that I was from outer space and came down and asked this question. What do you mean, recall process? Yes. What's your recall process? Does everybody have one here? No hands come up. No, they don't. It's inconsistent actions. 1 month they do it like this. 1 month they do it like that. They quit calling people. They don't call at all, like Laura said earlier. Patient retention in practices, when they first jump on board with us, we see it at 40 and 50%. I asked Rohit what he's seeing. I think he told me around 60 in average. Is that what you told me?
Yeah, we see about 60, 65%.
Yeah, I'm seeing it is low. One practice, 28% retention. What are they doing to these people? I had somebody last week, I was lecturing in New Orleans. We did our Spice Up Your Practice seminar. And someone was telling me over there that they're getting 200 new patients a month. And you're doing that for 4 years. What are you doing to the people when they arrive? I don't know. I mean, why aren't they staying there? I have a good idea what's happening.
Right.
What was your good idea what was happening?
Well, what I see, and Laura, you've probably seen this as well, is they want the patient to become part of their dental family. And the patient doesn't give a crap about being part of a dental family. That's not why they called. And they called because they wanted to get in, maybe for a cleaning. Okay, well, you know what? That's what they wanted. Maybe that's not the most optimum thing, but they don't want to come twice for that cleaning. And that's what a lot of these practices that are getting 150, 200, 300 new patients a month are doing. And they don't stay. And a lot of new patient broken appointments too in these practices.
So you're recommending a first appointment cleaning then, if that's what they want?
If that's what they want.
Yeah.
I just, I'm not saying that, I'm just telling you what the stats show me. We've been keeping stats for many, many, many.
And what do the stats show you?
And the stats show me, without a doubt, a doctor can call me and tell me how many new patients he's getting a month, and I pretty much know how he's bringing in new patients.
Okay, we'll go. Tell it.
I'll say this. Do you do marketing? No. How many new patients do you get a month? Well, if they know, they tell me 8, 10. 8, 10, 12. They should be getting about 1 to 2% of their patient base is what I consider healthy in internal referrals. So a practice that's not marketing. And so if they tell me they're not marketing and they're getting 20, 25, 30, 50, boy, they have great customer service. They're doing something right. So, but I've noticed over the years, again, I've been doing this for 30 years. So I've noticed over the years that when someone, it's just like an observation. It's like, okay, isn't that strange? These low new patient numbers are from practices that bring them to doctor's chair first. Over and over again. And then I got to thinking, well, it's a good thing, because if the doctor was really busy and getting 40 new patients a month, there's no way they would have time to do any dentistry, because they'd be seeing just new patients. And then I had one doctor that I worked with, and he said, I'll always see him first, Sandy. We'll work with you and we'll do everything else you say, but I'm never going to not do that. So we were trying to work on his target, like how much he should be producing each day. And what I like to do is figure the target, break it down by the hour, and then break it down by the unit. And so when I did that with him, he soon realized that he'll never make his target when he's seeing 3 new patients a day. You follow me? So there's a lot to be said.
So how do you think a new patient should be brought in?
Say that again?
How do you think a new patient should be brought in?
Well, I think if someone calls the practice and they're not having an emergency, let's say they're not having an emergency, they say they want a cleaning, put them with the hygienist. Now the doctor must meet them first. And that is, somebody will come on and say on Dental Town, they'll say, well, I think in my state, you have to see them first. Well, yeah, in all states. So I'm not saying the doctor doesn't meet them.
Yeah, but even that's bullshit. They'll say the hygienist can't examine the x-rays. And I say, okay, well, name me one hygienist in prison for reading an x-ray. Someone just drove by your office with a pound of meth in his trunk, and you're afraid that, you have to meet the patient first.
Right. So you meet the patient first. You get the patient in, meet the patient first, seat him in hygiene. Doctor goes in, takes a look at the patient. The hygienist proceeds. Or maybe the patient's in the chair and it's like, oh my goodness, this patient has perio. Oh, well, let's get started on something, right? And at the end of the appointment, the doctor goes back in, and then they decide where to proceed from there. But you're delegating. It's like now the dentist is over there doing a root canal or maybe a couple of crowns. And so when you start looking at their production numbers by the unit of time by provider, it gets pretty interesting, and their time becomes valuable and they realize it for the first time.
And I'm actually going to agree with Sandy. And one of the things she said was delegate. And the biggest, that's where we're talking about training and customer service, like retaining your patients means that every moment counts with them. And if you're a hygienist, they need to be able, I talk to doctors all the time that want to try to do shorter pro-fees, get them in faster, more patients. We only see some of our healthy patients 2 hours a year. Those 2 hours matter. That's the customer service, because that's the importance. So the patient remembers, why did I come to this practice? I always feel like, if they feel like they're a number, they're getting advertisements from all the competition. I get mailers from 5 different dentists in my neighborhood. They're easily going to go somewhere else if they feel like they're a number in your practice. So that's the importance of making sure that your staff's trained, and the doctors, the more you have a team that can communicate and help the patients understand their treatment and take the time with the patients, the less the doctor has to do that, right? And the other thing I think is, and this is huge, and if I could change this is my mantra, answer the freaking phones. You want to retain your patients? Answer the freaking phones. Do you know how many dental offices? I just wrote an article on this. I'll call at lunchtime and I get voicemail. I'll call during the day and they say, I must be helping another patient. Your call's important to us, but leave a message. That, I don't care if you're helping another patient or not. My call's important, answer the phone. So that would be for me, is like train your team.
But Laura, there's something they won't talk about. They're entitled. There's nothing I think is more hilarious than a conservative Republican dentist talking about how effed up the government is. I'm like, dude, look at you. You're worse than the DMV. I mean, they work Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. If they have a cancellation 11, they'll all sit around 11. And if someone calls up and say, well, I could be there by noon. Oh, no, we close down at noon. And we're all going to lunch. Even though we've all been sitting on our ass from 11 to 12, we're all entitled to lunch at noon. And then they will go home. There's a thread on Dental Town where I tore into some guy. Maybe I was too hard on him. He says, well, what do you do when someone has a toothache and it's like 4:30 and you leave at 5? And they're all talking about how to temporize. And I'm like, well, maybe you should just do your damn job.
Yeah.
Maybe you should just stay after past 5. I mean, can you imagine a fireman leaving a fire? Oh, it's 12 o'clock. We're all entitled for lunch. We're like the dentist and the DMV. We're going to let this thing burn for an hour while we go. I mean,
there was one on Dental Town. I don't know, Sandy, if you commented on it or not. Sandy and I both love the same topics, where a dentist said his schedule was getting low and is falling apart. And so he took a longer lunch than expected, that he had normally planned, came back early to find his office manager and the dental assistant and back getting high on nitrous, and went on Dental Town and asked what he should do. Every dentist before me told them, don't fire them. Patients don't like turnover. Don't let them go because you'll have unemployment. I got on and said, why do you think your schedule's falling apart? Your staff's in the back getting high on nitrous. Like their focus is on the wrong targets, on the wrong thing. We need to invest in our team. You need to have the right team. At the end of the day, I hear dentists say all the time, we're family. You know what? We're not family. I mean, unless you're actually married.
But when they say they're family, I mean, almost every family I know is the most dysfunctional part of the person's life.
Right.
I mean, usually, I've had so many employees over the last 3 years say, the best thing about working for you is when I was going through a hard time in my divorce, or I was going through a hard time in my life. It's like, my God, their families are crazy. The dental office should be better and less dysfunctional than anyone's family.
Right. I think it's just a justification for them to say, well, we're family. She's worked for me for 10 years, or she's got, a single mom. I understand. But at the end of the day, they got a job to do. We give them a great environment, a great place to work, but they've got a job to do.
I think it's more than just being family. I think it's a lot of the dentists are held hostage, and I use that very lightly. Is they are actually held hostage by their employees because the dentist doesn't know squat about how to run their business. So they're just scared. The family word is just coming in because they don't want to say anything else. That I'm scared of my employee. If the employee leaves, I'm going to be on the street. And that's how a lot of them feel, that they don't know and they're not in control. And if they let somebody go, they will lose control even more. And that's complete lack of leadership. And that begins, and the buck stops with them, but everything else is an employee's problem. We have had people join practice by numbers, and they call us and say, well, joining the practice by numbers, will my practice suddenly get better? I'm like, no, it's not going to get better. What will get better is that you'll have a better understanding of your practice, but if you don't take an action, and if you don't work with a great consultant or a trainer and improve something, nothing is going to change. Absolutely nothing is going to change.
Rohit, I want you to finish the chiming in of I talked about the funnel of getting into the practice, and how do you lose 80% of your existing practice? They were talking about they don't have recall processes. Laura saying they don't confirm, they don't reappoint. How can you explain how 80% of the patients fall out the back door by numbers?
Yeah, no, it's if you have to think about it like a leaky bucket, right? The only way the patients are coming in is that spigot at the top where you have new patients being fed in through a marketing source, and that's a pretty tight marketing source because as you already pointed out, for 10 patients to click your website, one of them might call you, and actually it gets even worse because if let's say 20 people click your website, 2 people call you, and one person is missed by your office because they were at lunch. So the conversion is even lower than that sometimes. But now with that said, a lot of practices focus on new patients, and I don't disagree that new patients are important to a practice. They are very important to a practice. And some consultant said, which I don't know, which I'm going to repeat, which is there's no problem in the practice you cannot solve with more new patients. That's a fact. But with that said, there's a huge aspect of patients just leaving the door, that leaky bucket where patients are coming from the top and patients are leaving from the bottom. And what are the sources of patients leaving from the bottom? Let's look at a few examples. One is canceled and failed appointments. Patient calls, fails, appointments, cancels appointments, there's no follow-up. Nobody's calling them back to say, let's get these patients back on the schedule. If this is not a repeat offender, yes, they failed an appointment, let's get them back on the schedule. There are 6 other people in their family, let's not lose the whole family because we already lost an appointment. Failed and canceled appointment, a huge source of losing patients. Another huge source of losing patients is that there's no real recall system and patients don't come back. They just don't come back. Another important aspect is pre-appointments. When patient comes in for a recall visit, you don't appoint for their next visit. Well, guess what? It might be 7 months, might be 8 months. It might end up being a year, and then they might get another postcard from 5 other dentists in the neighborhood offering them something new, something shiny. Okay, and if you don't have a relationship with that patient on an ongoing basis, that patient is going to go to the next doctor who offered them something new. Maybe they offered them a Sonicare, and that's it. You lost that patient. Okay, and then you have other things like patients come in and they just don't, or new patients come in and you don't appoint them. You don't make it a point and you measure. Didn't even come in for a hygiene visit. They came in just for a consult or they came in just for a new patient exam, and they left your practice without their next appointment. At any given point, we should have, and here's how I measure active patients, any patient that was seen in their practice in the past 18 months. And it's a little bit different than what you were mentioning, Dr. Fran, that any patient that's appointed. Now, if I measure it based on your definition, most of my practices, active patient count will go from X to X by 2, because most practices, the active patient count that is actually appointed for their next visit is half. Okay, so let's say a practice has 5,000 charts. Out of that, 2,000 of them have been seen in the last 18 months. If I truly measure how many of them have future appointments, that's half of that. Okay, so now we're down to 1,000 people, and that number keeps growing. That number just doesn't increase. That number just stays flat. And we go into practices and you see like, well, my production is not growing, and we bring up the active patient charts, and the active patient charts are completely flat. I mean, there's just no growth happening in there. And like, well, I'll keep getting new patients. Why am I not growing? Well, because you have a leaky bucket. You keep putting patients from the top, and tons of them keep leaving from the bottom.
There's a really good statistic in Practice by Numbers where you can look at this month, how many new patients have you gotten, and how many patients are going inactive. And that was one of the first wake-up calls we got when we got into Practice by Numbers. I was like, well, no wonder we're flat. We're inactivating 18 months as many as we're bringing in. We need a reactivation program that's much stronger. So it's a big wake-up call to see that, you know, you're paying all this money to get in new patients while you're letting the same amount or more go out the back door.
Well, do you guys, one thing that I found I've been watching for 3 years that's very interesting, because I love numbers. I've loved numbers for many years, and as a practice management consultant, I'm always wanting to have something that, of course, help the clients. So I noticed that with all the automated recall systems, what do you think that's doing to patient retention? You think it's improving patient retention with automation? I don't think so. That's not what the numbers are showing. So retention's less once they quit, once they started emailing people and texting people all the time. I'm sorry it's not the most popular, but I don't get any kickbacks from any company. I'm really happy about that. So I can stand here and say, this is the real results. The real results are, you know what? There's some things missing.
So what do you say that you should call
Dan Kennedy, do you know who Dan Kennedy is?
Of course.
Okay, Dan Kennedy says that postcards still work best. And I'm telling you, my job is to make practice successful. If it's popular, I don't care. If it makes more money for the doctor, it makes the practice better, I'm doing it. If it's not popular, really, I don't care.
Where's Dan Kennedy at these days?
He's doing a little mastermind with some dentists, I think this week or next. And I said,
but where's he living at?
I think Ohio.
Huh.
So that where he lives, Ohio. And so I said, make sure you give this answer. And they jumped in, they said, no, I already know the answer. He says yes. That works better.
I know texting is better than phone calls, because whenever I call my 4 boys, they don't answer, and they text me right back and say, "What up, Dad?"
I
like, why couldn't you FaceTime me?
I want to be real clear about something. I didn't say text and emails could not benefit. I didn't say that. I want to be real clear. You need to incorporate a few things to retain more patients and keep a strong recall system.
Well, you know what? And I would add to that, Sandy, 30% of the dentists in the United States don't have some sort of an appointment reminder service, right? Like one of the services out there, which I'm shocked at, right? And the concept behind it, the reason I asked, and they said, because they want personalized confirmations for the patients. They want to call. Well, I got to tell you, I sit at the front desk in my dental office. Most of the time when I call a patient, I get voicemail. They don't answer their cell phones. They're at work, they're whatever.
You need all the system. You need that. And
I was going to say, so what happens is I think dentists who do get any one of these softwares, they then stop making calls and they just rely on emails. And you can't. You have to customize your communication to the best results for that patient. And if that patient texts, then text them. If that patient needs a phone call, call them. But when the team just stops making calls and only relies on that, not everybody, some people want phone calls. Some people need that voice.
Yes.
Yep.
But they can't be too many. And that's what we see. Like a lot of patients, like some systems wanting to send tons of emails and they're saying like only 28% of emails are opened, and you can't just turn your recall system over to a third party and be out of sight, out of mind. You need a little bit of all of them, and that's a strong system. Now, I will tell you, if 2 hours are saved for doctor, and I haven't that person appointed 3 weeks ago, I want to hear their voice. You see, the thing that ruined me is I recorded calls for 15 years, to confirmation calls, and then compared them to people that showed up or broke the appointment. If they broke the appointment, I'd go listen to the call. I did that 15 years. And I learned that you can hear it in their voice if they're not coming.
Exactly.
And they ask questions, and voicemails emails and texts don't hear that. So if it's a implant case coming in, I want to hear the voice.
Right.
I want to hear the apprehension.
Well, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with people. And we do something to people don't like. They'll find any reason not to come to dentists. So definitely. I think we definitely agree on that.
Absolutely.
The people are complex. Like they'll say, well, I can't really afford that. And how many people have you heard the last week say, oh my God, that Floyd Mayweather fight, it's only $110, but I'm going to go buy a brand new 60-inch screen because there's no way I'm going to watch that fight on a 48-inch screen. So here's somebody, that's wearing a flipper, and they're going to watch the Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor fight. They're going to upgrade a new deal. They're going to have a party. They're going to drop $1,000 for about a 30-second boxing fight when Floyd Mayweather knocks the shit out of that guy. I want to say one more thing on the recall. It seems like when everybody's talking about a reappointment, they always talk about hygiene, but standard of care, we have 4,000 endodontists in America, and they all schedule a 1-year follow-up PA of the root canal to see if it worked. And there's another opportunity just to get you back into the deal. Implants. We're showing, the data is showing at 60 months, we have a 20% periimplantitis failure rate going on, which could have been picked up at 1 year, that someone left a spicule of cement, that it wasn't down all the way. So we need to move reappointing from just a cleaning to every root canal needs a 1-year follow-up x-ray, and every implant needs a 1-year follow-up bite wing. And when they come back, and we tell them, I can't warranty this implant for 5 years because without seeing an x-ray at 1 year, because what if something was wrong that I could have fixed in 10 seconds at 1 year, and now at 5 years, the whole case needs to be taken out and redone. Same thing with endo. We need to talk about endo reappointment and tie that to the warranty. Same with implants. And now you have another opportunity to keep that patient. And then when they come back, for their 1-year checkup, then you can say, by the way, you have 2 cavities in your mouth. You don't want them to turn into root canals. Let's get those done.
The big thing about that, and I agree with you, is as the doctors listening to this, they're going to go, yes, I agree with what Howard says. They're going to go to their front office staff and say, I need to see them in a year. And this front office staff's not going to be trained. And then the handoffs don't happen correctly. The patient maybe schedules, maybe doesn't. The girls up front don't know the importance about it. So they say, well, the doctor wants to see you in a year if you want. And then they leave and they cancel. And that's where that whole system thing Sandy's talking about, and really training. I mean, the team needs to understand the why. Why is this important? Because right now they're just The doctor's telling them what to do. The staff doesn't really understand the why. The handoffs aren't happening correctly. We don't know if the patient's being appointed. There's no way for the doctor to know unless he has something like practice by numbers. And then he goes on Dental Town and complains that his front office employees don't know what they're doing. Because it's that leadership part, that communication part, that training part that I think is really missing. Because I think it's great. I mean, every patient should be back to get things checked, but the staff up front need to know why. Why is that important, and how are we going to make that happen?
Yeah, it's true. What practice by numbers is going to do, it's going to be like it's a scoreboard. That's really what it is. It's a scoreboard. I couldn't imagine going watch the LSU Tigers on Saturday night without a scoreboard, right? Yeah. So that's what dentists need. They need to know what's happening in their practice. They need to know what to look for and what team members are doing their jobs.
I'm going to tell you guys a quick story with practice by numbers where we were having an issue where our sales weren't super great that month, where we were like, kind of down. And before that, my husband would be like, I don't know, it's the wrong time of month or whatever. We went to practice by numbers. We started pulling numbers. We started realizing how many exams were the associates doing versus the owner doctors. Yeah. How many? Yeah, just to know, because I said, do you realize that the associates are doing more exams than you? You're the owner of the practice. And he's like, oh, this might be from me. And just really looking at the numbers. And like you said, the man in the mirror, Howard, like to stop and go, oh, like Sandy said, I got out of this habit. I started letting other people do this whatever step. And now my numbers are down. But you can track it and go fix that versus just kind of wondering why the numbers are where they are.
That's a good one. Hygiene, too. To compare hygienists and their production.
Yeah.
I want to talk about associates because you just said that word. I want to talk about that for a second. It seems like whenever I talk to my DSO CEO friends, the number one problem big corporate dentistry has is turnover of associates. I mean, it's just a revolving door. And it's no different in private practice. When you go talk to private practice, they just say, these associates, they just come and go, they jump at the next opportunity. Do you guys see, there's a lot of individual dentists listening to this right now. They're commuting to work, and they're like, you know what, I'd probably really make a lot more money if I brought on an associate. Do you really think an associate is, what do you think of associates in general? Do you think they're a necessary evil to cover more hours? Do you think it's a fastest way to double your income? Do you see these problems with associates? I mean, do you see the turnover with associates?
Absolutely.
In just corporate or private too?
Private.
Yeah.
I can only think of a handful of practices that have done it successfully. And
what percent have the private practices have high turnover with associates?
Well, I'd say out of 10 practices, maybe one. Maybe one has kept an associate over 2 years.
I know. Yeah. So it's really a failed business model, isn't it? To me, it seems like the only dentists that are making a return on investment have skin in the game. They either own the practice or they're a partner.
The associates are traveling through. It's just like, let me buy some time until I decide or can get a loan for my dream practice. And so a lot of dentists, I notice the new generation coming up, they want to have an associate. It's almost like that's how they measure their success. And so we start looking at their numbers and they can't support it. I mean, they're basically only booked out a week themselves, right? Their production's low. They can't afford to have an associate. There's not enough dentistry there. And they think, well, I'll market and get some more. No, not necessarily. So I think
it seems like only the owners will work through lunch. It seems like only the owners will stay after 5. It seems like only the owners do what it takes to get it done to pass their break-even point and enter the profit zone. And it seems like the associates are looking for just one. I mean, someone will miss their appointment 9 times, and they'll start saying, "Well, schedule that person only at Fridays at 4." I mean, just so they know they can leave an hour early. I mean, I just don't really see evidence of employee mentality in dentistry.
And I think it's going to be harder nowadays too, because the corporate dentistry, they're offering them so much more than a private dentist can offer them. So it's not even competitive anymore because they're going there, getting their college paid off, their loans, getting all the CE they need. And so that's not even feasible for a private practice dentist anymore.
Well,
And I noticed that, like, sometimes when, not all the time, but sometimes, so if any of my clients are listening, I notice the associates that will come to our classes when we're basically putting solutions on a silver platter and handing it over, and they're on their phone texting, or maybe they don't come back after lunch because they're going to out with their girlfriend or to New Orleans or something, and they're not here 100%.
Well, and one thing that I also want to add to all of this is associates is not for everybody. It's not for every practice. And if you try to put an associate in the practice, as Sandy, you mentioned, the practice doesn't support two doctors. And that's one thing that I've seen is that the owner doctor says, well, I work 4 days a week. What if I bring an associate and I'll start working 2 days a week and bring the associate? And that's the wrong reason to bring an associate in. The reason to bring an associate in is when your business is growing and you can actually absorb. And as far as revolving door concerns with an associate, I don't see there's anything wrong with that. I mean, if you have an associate that comes, works for you 2 years, and then leaves, I just don't see anything wrong with that. Where the associate comes in, they're going to work for you 2-3 years, and then they're going to leave. The associate is tracked well, they're compensated well. That's a completely fine model.
That's the headache of finding the replacement. I see a lot of dentists struggling with finding that replacement.
Okay, I want to ask you another question, because this is Dentistry Uncensored, and I like to piss off as many companies as I can per episode, but it seems like because we all love the dentist. I mean, I'm a dentist. It's a sovereign profession. I love my homies, but it seems like their complete practice is in chaos and turmoil, and they're going to solve it by getting into chairside milling or get a CBCT for $100,000 to start placing implants, or they're going to buy some $80,000 laser. Do you see these high-tech toys really associated with success? I mean, is it a no-brainer to say, yeah, if you want to be successful, you need to have CAD/CAM, be placing implants, have a CBCT, and a big expensive laser?
Yeah.
I actually speak on this, Howard, and I talk about the small business cycle and what we need to do for small businesses, any business. And it's, you need to market your business, you need to deliver quality products, you need to get referrals and reviews, or you need to deliver quality products, and then you need to get referrals. And in that cycle, dentists understand producing. That's what they taught in dental school. And so
say those 4 things again. Market your practice.
You got to market your practice. You got to sell your product. You got to deliver a quality product, and then you need to ask for referrals and reviews. So if I had a small business store, a clothing store, I would need to market my store, sell the clothing that we have in the store. It needs to be quality clothing, so they'll go out and tell their family and friends to come to my store. And in that small business cycle, the dentist is only trained really in dental school on delivering a quality product. Which is great. Otherwise, we would have a lot of unethical.
And even that's bullshit. 30 years ago, they delivered a silver filling. It lasted 38 years.
Right.
Now they deliver this plastic shit that lasts 6.5 years.
Yeah.
And they absolutely think they're a better dentist. They'll even sit there and say, "Well, the problem working with my old man is, he ain't very good. I mean, he's still doing amalgams." Like, dude, his amalgams last 4 times longer than your tooth color, and they're putting tooth colored fillings in bald grandpas like me, where you couldn't see one of my molars if you had a telescope in your hand.
Right.
So they can't even deliver quality.
Well, and then that's where they get into this, like, we need to have better technology. And I mean, we're a CEREC office, we have 3D cone, like, we have all of that, but that's about delivery. That's not fixing the practice. That's about the newest high-tech, fun toy, because that's what dentists love. They love that delivery.
They like that little.
Yeah. And I joke about this, and no offense to the sales reps that are out there, but the sales reps will come in and they'll talk to the doctor and they'll say, "How was your month last month?" And the doctor's like, "Well, it was a little slow. People were busy. They don't have time to come to the dentist." And next thing you know, they own $130,000 CEREC because the rep, people
Same-day dentistry.
Yeah. Well, and so then the dentist has the CEREC now, and the schedule's still apart. They don't know how to ask for a referral. They don't know how to market. And now they have this $130,000 loan, and it's all because they think in delivery, production, which isn't a bad thing, but you need to know the rest of the small business model. You need to know everything.
But also, Laura, they don't know exactly what's going on in their practice in terms of they asked the doctor, what was your lab fees last month? And the doctor says, oh, it was $5,000. Like, wow, we can replace that lab fees and you get the CEREC machine. All you need to buy is those $15 blocks. And then the dentist doesn't understand that the lease payment for the CEREC machine now just became their lab fees.
Yeah.
And even after they pay it off after 6 years, well, guess what? That machine is useless after 6 years because you're going to have to buy a new machine because that's going to be outdated.
They're all outdated in 5, just like your iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
Sandy,
So they'll constantly.
Sandy, what do you think of the CEREC? Do you think that's something you should buy if you really want to make a lot more money?
I like to look at numbers. I'm a realist. I am a realist, and I only look at numbers. I don't care what somebody says or what's cool. I don't care. I said that. It's all about results for me. And I look at all our practices. I look at the $1 million, the $2, the $3 million. Let me tell you, there's a lot of $2 and $3 million practices without a CEREC.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, for a long time, it was the people doing under $1 million that had the CERECs.
And so I mean it's crazy. Like they'll take like a $17 Impergov impression, they'll send it up the street to their lab buddy who makes them a zirconian crown for $99, and a rep will come in and say, "Well, why spend $17 on a 3M Impergov impression when you could buy a $17,000 oral scanner?"
Right.
And then your buddy up the street, he's not even equipped to take your impression. So now you have to send it across. I mean, it's like every time they have an idea, they go deeper in debt.
They're all
trying to sell dentists.
And I usually say what's the most important piece of technology in the dental office? And the dentists in the room are like, oh, it's my CEREC, it's my 3. No, you know what it is? It's your freaking telephone. Your telephone is the most important piece of technology in your office because if we aren't answering the phones well, you're not doing a lot of CERECs. So if that's not ringing and if you're not on it, that machine sits in back and it holds your lab jackets. The CEREC's amazing, but it's
let's go to there. It's pretty obvious that there's 168 hours in a week. Anybody I know who's got data, who's shown me data, shows that the dental office is open 32 hours a week, which is 19% of the week. So obviously, 50% of the incoming calls come in when you're closed. And it takes about 13 incoming calls when you're closed before one leaves a message. And that's usually some stay-home alcoholic woman with 3 cats. And so then we look at the ones coming in when you're open, which is the other half of the calls, and 50% go to voicemail.
Yeah.
And then the ones that are answered, most are answered like, "Can you please hold?" And then they put on hold. So and that's why I tell people never start a dental marketing company because they're going to blame the poor results on you because they'll never know that your marketing brought them 100 phone calls and half of them come in when you were closed, half that when you're open went into voicemail, and the ones that your front desk lady could only convert 1 out of 3 to an appointment.
Well, that's why.
How do you break that cycle?
Practice by numbers. That is we just looking at when our calls come in, it even hit me, and I'm a trainer in this, that when we're cycling through lunches, the phones ring more during that time. So we actually need more people at lunch and take our lunches later or earlier because between 11 and 1, our phones are the highest. And just looking, we answer our phones Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And it kills me when I'm speaking on a Friday and I'm like, so in this audience, how many people have your phones being answered right now? Nobody. They're letting it all go to voicemail. And I'm like, just get a college kid to answer your phone, get a service to help something, but people are calling your office and they're going to hang up. Like you said, Howard, they're going to move on or think they're going to call back and they don't. So
what percent do you think leave a message?
I would say probably 25%, maybe. I don't even know.
There are stats on that. But I'm not sure what they are, but it's probably 20, 25%.
Well, it depends if you have new patients or not. I think in terms of new patients, fewer new patients leave messages than if it's an existing patient. I think the chances of them leaving a message is much higher than if it's a new patient. And every practice, the first thing they should be doing is, if they don't have an answering service, the next day morning when they walk in, they should need to look at not just the voicemail, they need to look at every single missed call. And that's what Practice My Numbers does. It gives you a list of all the missed calls that you had from the last time you were closed to time when you're open, and it tells you these ones are new patients versus these ones were existing patients.
Oh,
Now,
So you
love
try
that.
it.
now, for you to work, for that to work, does it have to be a VoIP call, a voice
No.
over internet protocol, or can it be a landline?
It's working in Laura's office, I believe, right now.
Yeah,
and
it's a landline.
It's just a landline, yeah.
Mhm.
A landline.
Yeah.
I want to stay on that though. Okay, so again, so 3 people call on average. Some say it's 3.5. I've seen one person say it's 4 before the front desk. First of all, what do you guys, girls call the front desk lady? I mean, what's the
She's a receptionist, the one who sits at the front desk.
well that when I say that pisses off a lot of them.
A
What
lot
do
of
you
them
call
don't.
them?
Yeah.
Team members at the front office or
Team
the front
members.
desk. You say
Yeah.
they're front desk, but you don't call them the front desk ladies.
So about on average, about 3 people have to call before she can convert one to schedule a butt in the chair. How do you address that? How do you try to get the conversion to 1 out of 2?
Training.
Yeah,
Training.
but what is some of the
Get
low
them
hanging fruit
in,
on
get
that?
them in, get them in.
Yeah.
It's you know what? It's like I just did a full day of this on Saturday of this training. But I'll tell you what, I recommend that people record their calls and let the staff listen to themselves.
But how would you record it? What technology? What do you use?
Well, it depends on the state because there's about 16 states where you have to have a 2-party. You have to get permission of the patient. But there are the rest of them you don't have to. Like Texas, Louisiana, for instance, we can record any call without getting the other person's permission. So we just record every call going out, every call coming in.
But what
and
software do you use to record them?
You go down to Radio Shack and get an Olympus digital recorder. They've got this cutest little device for $15 that you plug into the digital recorder, put it in your ear, and you don't hook it to your phone at all. Put the receiver up to your ear, it records both sides of the phone call. And somebody breaks an appointment after a confirmation on there, you listen to that call and you would believe, you can hear the patient say, when is that? What's he going to do? You wouldn't believe what you hear on those calls. It's amazing. So even calls coming in, I just recently listened to one where the patient called for an appointment. I would like to get an appointment. My husband was in an accident. He needs 5 implants and a bridge. And the girl tried to be the doctor. She went into this long, 22-minute call. Finally, the husband walks in the room and takes the phone and says, I just want an appointment. I don't care about the insurance. The dental staff person was saying, well, what insurance? And doing all this. No, just get me the appointment. That's what we hear.
Okay.
So you were asking for some of the tricks. I think the biggest thing, and Sandy was kind of touching on this, is that our staff, our team, our people answering the phones, they've become very insurance driven. They've become very, we've got certain things and what they're forgetting is we need to be getting them in. We need to understand insurance, but at the end of the day, on the other end of the phone, that person has issues and concerns and feelings, and get them in the office. You can't sell them over the phone. You can't help them over the phone. And the first thing we do, when you call in a dental office, I do mystery calls in the dental offices. Usually they say, what's your name? How did you hear about us? And the third question out of their mouth is, what insurance do you have? Like our patients are walking in with a sticky note on their forehead, like they're an insurance plan, not a person. So that's where the staff needs to be trained on understanding that that's a person on the other end of the phone. And we have to offer that amazing experience from that first phone call to really convert that patient to be a long-term patient in the practice.
Yeah. And Dr. Fran, to answer your question about what software and what system to use, one of the things Practice by Numbers is working on right now is being able to record every single new patient call. So what will happen is it will start recording every single new patient call, and they'll do the 2-state confirmation thing, also make sure that the patient is notified and so is the staff that the call is being recorded, so we can do it across all the 50 states. But then what it will go ahead and do further is it will flag the calls that did not convert so that those become teachable moments. So those become calls that you can go ahead and listen to.
When is that going to be ready?
It's beta in the next month and a half or so. So it's going to be out as beta, and then it's going to be available to our existing customers, and then we're going to release it to everybody else.
Okay, I want to follow Laura's deal. She said you only need 4 things: market your practice, sell your product, deliver quality, ask for referrals and reviews. Let's go sell your product. It seems this is my belief. Tell me if you believe it's right or wrong. I think the well, the insurance data says just on fillings that the America has a 38% drill, fill, and bill rate. So for every 100 million fillings cavities diagnosed, 38% are turned into MOs, DOs, occlusals, whatever. So that's 1/3. I think 1/3 of Americans will never buy anything. There's people who have insulin-dependent diabetics who are going to drink a case of beer tonight and smoke a pack of cigarettes. People are crazy. And I'm just talking about my uncles. And it's that middle third. What I believe is that the average guy, which is going to do that 647,000 collected, take home 179, is 3 people come with the cavity. He drills, fills, and bills 1. 1 will never do it, but it's that other guy that gets 2 out of 3 people to do it. How do you present the treatment? Some people say that you got to take the dentist out of it completely and get a treatment plan presenter. So talk about how can the dentist increase his conversion rate from diagnosed decay to drill, fill, and bill?
Well, I'll go first on that one. I actually don't think the dentist should be taken out of the equation, personally. I think the dentist should be trained in sales.
But you're sleeping with your dentist.
Well,
you're completely
I know, right?
biased.
Not all my dentists. I have 3 of them. But I think the thing is that doctors and staff they value production over sales, and they're afraid of that sales word. But if you think about it, you just said this, we put drills and needles in their mouth, and this person's not going to want to do that, but they're going to go pay for the fight, and they're going to go get a big 60-inch screen TV, because which would you rather have? Drills and needles in your mouth or a big screen TV? And we rush through the case presentation. We do it chair side. We send the patient up front. The patient's standing there. We let them look at the money and insurance at the front desk, and they're only 5 steps away from leaving. So they're going to do everything they can to get out, because people don't want what we sell. But what we give them is dental health. We give them something that's going to make them live longer and live a better life. So we as a team need to value the treatment plan presentation part. We need to value that patients, there's a buying cycle. People, when they first hear about this, like Sandy was saying, they're coming in for a cleaning. They don't have a toothache. They didn't know anything was wrong. We tell them they need a crown. They thought they were here for a cleaning. So I suggest we sit down in the consultation room. If you've got a consult room, we use it for every treatment plan presentation, and actually have a discussion with the patient, educate them, answer their questions, go over the insurance, go over the money. Don't do it at the front desk. Don't do it, when the patient's laying back in the chair and we've got, gloves and masks on. We have to recognize that a person has to be sold on this. They don't want it. It would be weird for patients to go, yay, root canal, I can't wait, right? So we have to value the sales process, I think, a lot more as a team, and a lot of that comes with training.
Yeah, I think that what's happening, practices really don't handle patient objections. Mm-hmm. And we focus a lot on training staff to recognize the main objections. They usually go past it. I'm not hearing anyone really showing them the pus and using trigger words and things like that. So we focus in a lot on that, on using those trigger words.
But Sandy, do you think the doctor should tell them they have 3 cavities, or do you think the treatment plan presenter?
I think the doctor should, in the treatment room, say, we're going to get you back. You've got some decay. Let me show you this. And they're going to get you set up. And the doctor leaves. And then the dental assistant raises the chair, leaves the bib on. Once you take the bib off, you know what happens. They want to run out of there. Leave the bib on and look at the patient and make sure there's no questions, and repeat what the doctor said. And I'm going to bring you to Susie, and we're going to get that scheduled. And that's where it could be in a private area or not, depending on the logistics of the practice, and get that patient's finances handled, the agreement signed, and lastly, the appointment. You don't give them the appointment until the financials are done. Right. But the objections to scheduling are not handled. And a lot of times patients, because people are afraid to go to the dentist, and they'll put up some phony excuse about why they can't get the work done. And, I can't afford it. Well, are you kidding me? Got all this decay. You can't afford not to do it. But who's telling them that? Who's showing them and telling them what will happen if they don't proceed with the treatment? And that's what needs to happen.
I want to ask you, Sandy, because one of the things that I feel is that until the patient actually sees the dollar amount, till they see what the insurance is going to cover and not what their out-of-pocket is, we don't really get their true objections. And so that's where I feel that they do this to the dentist. Yep, that sounds good. They do this to the dental
assistant. Get out of there as fast
Yeah.
as you can.
And then they stand at the front desk, and if their staff's not trained and they show them the treatment plan, they go, and this is your out of pocket, that's when we're really going to get the objections. And if they're, 10 feet away from the front door, they're going to say anything they can to get out. And I agree with you. Don't give an appointment till they're closed. But I think the money part should come sooner in the process, because that's when we're really going to hear, well, wait a minute.
I was listening to a call recently, and the patient said they were actually confirming the appointment, and the patient said, oh, well, I've been having a crick in my neck. And the scheduler, who's trained, said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I tell you what, I'll let the hygienist know to be real gentle there. We could put a pillow there. She said, well, my left knee has been bothering me a lot. And she said, well, we'll help you get in the chair and everything will be okay. And then the patient said, can you bill me for it? And now there's the real objection. So because the computer screen was up and the staff member just didn't say, well, okay, and reschedule the appointment, yes, we can bill you for it, because she had been a patient for 15 years and her Social Security check was going to be coming in next week. You see?
Right. Yeah. And one of the other things, Howard, I want to mention, I like the dentist presenting treatment. I think they need to be trained. I think because they didn't teach them in dental school how to present, $5,000 or whatever. But I think that, if you were to go to a business, if the owner can't talk to you about what their fees are, that seems suspicious to me. It seems odd. Like, the dentist should be at least comfortable enough to do it. And one of the things and I like practice by numbers now, because, most dentists think they presented to the treatment to the patient. The patient went like this, so they're accepted. They accepted the treatment. And then when they don't appoint, they get on Dental Town and they complain about their front desk employees and your staff that can't get my patients to schedule. So now they can look and practice by numbers and actually look at a list of all the patients they presented to. Did they close or not? Was there follow-up? So they can become more accountable to the sales process too, because if the doctor doesn't know how to be able to present the dentistry and they're relying on their, front office employee, that's where Rohit was saying earlier, where they feel like they're, they work for them, they feel hostage to them because they're afraid to do anything. And we really need to help them get the training to be able to get the patients to accept.
So Rohit, what are you seeing on the conversion rate of diagnosed to delivered dentistry?
So that's something that depends on the size of the type of the practice and how, if the doctor is presenting a immediate needed treatment plan versus a comprehensive treatment plan. But what I do see, there's two things that we measure. One is treatment acceptance, which is the total amount of, let's say, $100,000 was presented and how much was actually scheduled and completed. That's treatment acceptance. But we also measure patient acceptance, which in turn is actually even more important, which is to say, if I present a treatment to about 100 patients, how many of them scheduled at least one item out of that? Okay, at those numbers, we see anywhere that patient acceptance of treatment, we see anywhere from about 60% to about 95%. Most practices falling in the range of around 60 to 70%. But ideally, if you remember, if you have treatment being presented and 30-40% of your patients are walking out without scheduling anything, that's a big red flag right there. Okay, and that's something we actually work with them to say, you have to look at these patients who are walking out, understand why are they walking out without scheduling any aspect of it. I mean, we're not talking about $50,000, $60,000 treatment plans. You're presenting a $1,000 treatment plan with 3 fillings and something else, and patients walked out. What's going on in the practice that's making these patients run out the door? Okay, is it finances? Is it the way it's being presented? Maybe it is the lack of education or whatever might be happening. So that's that number we measure. But once you start measuring the number about patient acceptance, that's when and then you start converting and understanding how much treatment is being accepted. And that varies anywhere from 30 to 60, 75%. And that's a very wide range. And I never have one practice compare that number to another practice, because it could be completely different. You may be practicing in a very different way than your dentist down the street.
So, Laura, you when I said, what's a dentist need to do? You said, market your practice, sell your product, deliver quality, ask for referrals and reviews. You really think ask for referrals and reviews, is that a serious component these days?
Huge. I think it's huge, because the patients, when they leave, they're not thinking about us. I mean, when they're done with their 6-month appointment, they're like, phew, and they're moving on. Now, there are some patients who do go out and tell their family and friends and all of that, but our patients need to know that, we would love them to go out and talk about us. We would love them to put reviews out and referrals. And it's important that the whole staff is trained on this. Anytime a patient gives your office a compliment, whoever is with them at that moment has to be comfortable to say, thank you. We would love to, we love feedback like that. If you wouldn't mind telling other people about our practice, we would love more patients like you. And the dentist, this is part of the leadership thing. If the dentist isn't comfortable doing that, the staff's not going to do it. And then they're going to have to rely on paid marketing to get new patients in, when really we can have internal systems to do it. And you've got to get people out talking about you. And it's the best way. People put reviews out about your practice. That's where, when somebody gets your postcard or they hear about you, they're going to go read the reviews before they pick up the phone and call you. So I think it's a huge part of growing the practice.
Yeah, when we measure the new patients where they're coming from, I look at internal referrals. There needs to be at least a third or more of all new patients coming into your practice that just heard about you through a friend or family. A huge
They're the best patients.
Yeah. And that goes back to where we started with experience. People are not going to go out of their way to put reviews out about you or to talk about you to other people unless they had an amazing experience or an awful experience. If your practice is just average, and when their appointment is just average and they got their cleaning and they paid their bill and they left, they're not going to go out of their way to talk about you. So that's where that customer service part comes in. When they feel like they're not a number and you've really taken care of them, they're going to go out and talk about you. And then you have to ask them, of course. So yeah, I agree 100%.
Okay, now I want to, at the last, are you guys still good? Are you, you haven't?
Good.
The thing the dentist, someone said earlier, I think Rohit said it, that there's no problem in dentistry that can't be solved by marketing. And I've always said that advertising is just a bad drug. I mean, if you get addicted to 100 new patients a month, you're never going to solve any of your problems. And I also think it was very interesting that Sears was headquartered in downtown Chicago in a metro of 5-6 million people, and Walmart was started in Bentonville, Arkansas, a town of about 5,000. And all of his policies was because he had to have patient retention. I remember in his book he was talking about he sold a pair of shoes and the heel fell off, and the lady brought it back to me. So that's not my responsibility. And then that Sunday the lady goes to his wife, Helen, your husband sold me a pair of shoes, didn't even last a week, and I'm never going to your store again. So then Helen's like, well, we just can't lose her damn family. I mean, there's only 5,000 people in this town. We just lost 5 of them. And so that was patient retention, is where he pushed the no questions asked return policy. And then he didn't even pay for it. He pushed up the supply line. Next time the old man came and sold him 10 shoes, he says, okay, but I'm going to exchange this. So he pushed quality up the control deal. And but the dentists don't want to hear anything about the new patient experience, the customer service. They just want a crap load of new patients to override every failure they have. So so embellish them. What do you recommend for marketing your practice? What's the best thing for my homies to get a bunch of new patients, to replace all the ones that left their office and are never coming back?
Uh-huh. Well, what do you hear? Okay, direct mail. I see people in some places have great success with direct mail, right? And some not so much success. But your best marketing is going to be your existing patients. Then, of course, you've got, the internet, the Facebook, that's the big thing. I know doctors that are getting a ton of new patients now working Facebook. Not so good for others. So it just depends, I think it depends a lot about where you are, where you're located. It's going to vary, but Facebook's doing pretty well right now.
For me, I would just say you've got to have regular reviews. You've got to have people talking about your practice. You've got to, because if I go on the internet and I look up a dental office and they haven't had a review in 4 or 5 months, I'm going to move on to the next dental office. So, and people feel that's like a word of mouth referral when they read the reviews about the practice. So I'm going to say your online presence is huge. And for offices that aren't watching it, the negative things that people are saying about your practice, you need to know what's out there. You need to make sure that your online presence is huge, because your marketing is not going to work if your reviews online aren't great.
And that's another thing, Laura, good point. And you have to drive people to give those reviews. Mm-hmm. So whenever they're giving those compliments, You're asking them to go tell their friends and neighbors and coworkers, but you're also asking them to give a review. So companies like Banyan are doing a great job with that. They have that patent system where you can take a photograph of the patient in the office, and then it guides the staff through the process, and that's working really well too for those reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to just add to that is, of course, internal referrals, online presence. Facebook, of course, I've heard it's starting to work. The jury is still out, though, meaning I haven't seen a huge success with Facebook, even though I see lots of courses out there, people trying to do it. Google is number one. I mean, if there's how many times I talk to doctors and they say, well, we're not advertising on Google because it's too expensive. Now, if you're advertising at all and not advertising on Google, it's probably the wrong thing to do right now.
Well, I'm gonna, Sandy, I have to take you to the woodshed on one thing. Your Twitter is not on your classicpractice.com website, and I just want to remind you guys, who's the president of the United States today? How did he get there? He had 50 million Twitter followers. Here's the deal. On Facebook, you have to give them money to boost your ad. If you have 500, if your practice has 2,000 followers on your Facebook page and you post something, Facebook isn't going to push it out to any of them unless you boost the ad. Twitter is different. You never give Twitter money. In Twitter, if your office has 500 followers and you tweet something, it goes to all 500. I mean, my God, no one should not understand. I mean, Donald Trump tweeted 18 times yesterday, and 50 million people got it like that. And then primetime television in the evening, CNN only has 1 million viewers. Fox News only has 3 million viewers. And Trump tweeted something to 50 million people. And so, you know, you need to build your Twitter following because it's free. And Sandy, I retweeted all your guys' last deal. Find Sandy's on there because it wasn't on her website. But yeah, so I tell everybody, you know, go from Facebook to Twitter. I mean, Mark Cuban was the first one to explain. He goes, Mark Cuban said, I paid all this money and built up 1 million followers. And then I find out that when I post something, it doesn't go to 1 million people. Yeah. And like, I'll put up, I have 300,000 people following me on Facebook at Howard Fran, and I'll post this podcast. And if I give them $300, they'll show it to 100,000. No, $100, they'll show it. No, it's basically $1 a person. If I boost it for $100, 100,000 people will see it. And if I boost it for $300, about 190,000 will see it. But when I push that on Twitter to my 21,000 Twitter followers, all 21,000 people get it for free. So the deeper you get in with Facebook, I mean, it was like the old joke when they started Medicare in 1961 with John F. Kennedy. Then he got killed, and then Lyndon B. Johnson, I think, got it signed in 63. And what did all the old physicians say? They said, don't get in bed with the government. If you get in bed with the government, you're going to get screwed. And now it is 50 years later. It's like, don't get in bed with Facebook. Because if you get in bed with Facebook, you are going to get screwed. There's a reason that guy's worth $56 billion and doesn't have a college degree. I mean, you know, so beware.
Okay. It's going to get fixed today.
Yeah. So I mean, I see all these people putting all this boosting on Facebook, and they don't even have the free Twitter option. Yet they're talking about Trump 24 hours a day. It's like, how do you not put two and two together? I mean, Twitter is a gold mine. It's just an absolute gold mine. You should go with the social media platforms that you never give them money. Who do you never give money? LinkedIn. I got 33,000 followers on LinkedIn. I've never given them a penny. Twitter, 21,000 followers. Never given them a penny. Facebook, it's a never-ending money machine.
I'm going to say, though, I think that one of the things for dentists listening to this is it's just one more thing on the checklist of things to do. So the more you can get help, I know that I'm on all the social media with Front Office Rocks. I built my business online. It's all from social media, but I have help with that. I mean, there's not enough time in the day to be a dentist, run your practice, get your phones answered, do your training, and go on Twitter. You need to make sure you get help. And like Sandy was saying, there's a lot of resources out there, but don't go up to your front desk employees and say, okay, great, fill the schedule tomorrow. And I want you guys tweeting every hour, because it's not going to happen, you know?
Well, what I can't believe happened is that I was able to get you three little studs on my show at the same time. This has been just unbelievable. I hope you guys all email Tom at dentaltown.com and ask him if you could write a number. I almost think, Rohit, I almost think you and Tom should talk about having a yearly summary, kind of a state of the union numbers. You know, every year, we should pick a month, like say June, July, August, something in the summer, where once a year, and I don't even know why I said in the summer, just once a year, we should do a state of the union of numbers. And this is what your numbers say. And a lot of people have asked me, they wanted to do that, but our team didn't really, but we believed a lot of the numbers was junk in, junk out. You know what I mean? And we didn't really believe, there's just big tons of data, but we didn't know about the accuracy. But that'd be fun. And Laura and Sandy, obviously. Oh, Sandy, you're speaking in Portland, the Oregon deal. Plug that.
I am. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to that.
When's that?
September. Last weekend in September.
Is it in Portland?
Yes.
And will you be drinking before, during, or just after at that show? Because it's at a brewery, isn't it?
Yeah. It's all all about beer, drinking beer and learning.
So if you're drinking beer and they're drinking beer while you're talking, will anyone remember anything that even happened?
I've got the best handouts ever. They're going to be able to access them on my website later.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of a confession story. Did you think I should tell a deep, dark, secret confession? So when we were little, you know, my mom made us all go to mass every single day, and sometimes they would all go at 8 o'clock. Sometimes I'd go at 6 o'clock mass because I meet my friend David Hornberg, and we'd run to the back of the church, get them a slut, then we'd go to Winchell's Donut and eat a chocolate donut and a carton of chocolate milk. And then when we came home, Mom would say, well, did you go to mass? And we just, here's our receipt. Here's our handout. Here's Miss Alette. But I don't know why I said that on TV, on the podcast. But hey, Laura, seriously, all you guys, I hope you work with Tom Jacoby. Email him, Tom at Dentaltown. Laura, I think that'd be a great article about the 4 things you said. Market your practice, sell your product, deliver quality, ask for referrals. Sandy, I always think you should... I mean, we love your stuff. I think you're one of the most well-read authors we've ever had on Dentaltown. I mean,
I have an announcement. I just turned 29,000 posts this weekend.
Ooh.
Nice. And
and it's 15 years this month. Well, actually, August.
15 years this August.
Yeah, on dentaltown.com. Yes, sir. Part of my life. First thing I do every morning, last thing I do every night.
Actually, in Howard, that's how Sandy and I became friends, is through Dentaltown. I started posting, and I'm like, who is this person? And we finally got to meet last year at Townie. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've had people get married off of Dentaltown.
Yeah, it's true.
You know that?
I witnessed it. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've actually had people meet their spouse. But love you guys all to death. Rohit, everyone, thank you so much for coming on. I bet you... and also, if this was too much for you, remember Ryan always gets a transcript of the program, and when we post this online on Dentaltown, there's always a transcript after it. But thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking to my homies. This has been really, really amazing.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fran.
Thank you, buddy. Rohit, and always call me Howard. I'll talk to you later.